I'm sitting alone at a table for 8, wearing my graduation gown, watching candles melt into puddles of wax. The waitress keeps glancing at me with pity in her eyes, probably wondering if I've been stood up on a date. If only it were that simple. My phone lights up with the family group chat. Mom, something came up with your brother's car. Rain check. Dad, sorry kiddo, next time. My sister doesn't even bother with an excuse, just a thumbs up emoji to Mom's message. I stare at the empty chairs, each one a reminder of how little I matter to them. The restaurant hums with other families celebrating their graduates, their laughter stabbing at my chest. I reserved this table 3 weeks ago. Send reminders, even offered to pay for everyone's meals. The waitress approaches carefully, like I might shatter. Would you like me to box up the food for your family? That's when I start crying. I walk home in the dark, still wearing my cap and gown, clutching 4 boxes of untouched food. My heels click against the sidewalk, each step heavier than the last. Strangers pass by, some smiling at my graduation outfit, not knowing I'm carrying the weight of rejection in these takeout containers. I get to my tiny apartment and see the family photos on my wall. Everyone's smiling in those pictures, even me. But I can count on one hand how many times they've actually shown up for me. I set the food on the counter and pulled out my phone. The family chat is still open, Mom already posting about my brother's car being fixed. 23 comments. Nobody mentions missing my dinner. I hover over the chat settings, my finger shaking. Then I delete it. I take off my cap, set it on the table, and whisper to my empty apartment, "Congratulations, Shelly." My name's Shelly Quinn, and my family didn't think I'd make it this far. They never said it directly, but actions speak louder than words, right? Growing up, I was the quiet one. The one who studied while my brother played sports and my sister posted perfect selfies online. There was background noise in a house that only celebrated the loud and the pretty. Nobody thought college was my thing. "You're not that type of smart," Mom used to say, like there were different categories and I fell into the wrong one. Dad would just nod along, more interested in my brother's football stats than my report cards. But I applied anyway, got accepted, even earned a partial scholarship. They called it luck. I called it 4 years of proving them wrong. Now I'm a college graduate, summa cum laude, and they couldn't even show up for dinner. I remember being 10 years old, bringing home straight A's, and watching my parents throw a party for my brother because he scored 1 touchdown. I stood in the kitchen holding my report card, waiting for someone to notice. Nobody did. My sister walked past me to take a selfie with the decorations. My dad was too busy recording my brother's celebration speech, and my mom was on the phone telling relatives about her star athlete son. I put my report card on the fridge myself, using an old magnet shaped like an apple. It stayed there for 3 days before Mom took it down to make room for my brother's team photo. That's when I learned that in my family, only certain achievements counted, and mine weren't on the list. I started studying in my room with the door closed, teaching myself that success didn't need an audience. I was 17 when the acceptance letter arrived. I ran downstairs, waving it like a flag, shouting that I got into State University. Mom was folding laundry. She barely looked up. "That's nice, honey. How are you planning to pay for it?" My excitement died in my throat. "I got a partial scholarship. I can work part-time." Dad walked in, hearing the tail end of our conversation. "College is a waste of money for some people, Shelly. You'll probably just come back after a semester anyway." My sister laughed from the couch. "Yeah, the real world's gonna humble you real quick." But I saw something in Dad's eyes that hurt more than his words. He didn't believe in me. None of them did. That night, I filled out financial aid forms alone in my room. I decided right then that I'd go anyway, with or without their support. Freshman year nearly broke me. I worked 25 hours a week at a campus diner, took a full course load, and studied until my eyes burned. My roommate, Jenny, would invite me out to parties, to movie nights, to anything that looked like fun. I always said no. "I can't afford to fail," I told her once. She didn't understand. Her parents sent care packages and called twice a week. Mine didn't even know my dorm address. I'd see other students complaining about their parents being too involved, and I'd think about how mine forgot my birthday 2 years in a row. Some nights, I'd sit in the dorm bathroom, crying as quietly as possible, wondering why I wasn't enough for them. But every morning, I'd wake up and go harder, because proving them wrong was the only fuel I had left. Every semester, I'd send updates home, made the dean's list, won a departmental scholarship, got invited to join an honor society. The replies were always the same. That's great. Good job. Sometimes just a thumbs up emoji. Meanwhile, my brother would post about getting a new car and the family chat would explode. 30 messages of congratulations, photos, celebration plans. My sister would share a new modeling photo and suddenly everyone was a proud parent. I'd share my achievements and the chat would go silent. Once I sent a photo of my acceptance into the honors program. My mom replied 6 hours later, "Don't forget to call your grandmother. It's her birthday." That's when I stopped trying to share my wins. They'd proven they didn't care about them. So I started celebrating alone, in my dorm room, with cheap pizza and the knowledge that I was doing this for me. 3 months before graduation, I did something stupid. I let myself hope. I made a reservation at Romano's, the nicest restaurant I could barely afford. I sent formal invitations to my family, printed on real cardstock. "You're invited to celebrate Shelly's graduation. Dinner at Romano's. I've made reservations for 8. I even bought little place cards with everyone's names. Mom responded first. "We'll try our best, honey." Dad, "Sounds good." My sister, "I'll check my schedule." My brother didn't respond at all. I took those lukewarm responses and let them grow into hope. I told myself this time would be different. This was graduation, after all. The biggest milestone. Surely they'd show up for this. I bought a new dress, practiced what I'd say, even wrote a little speech thanking them for their support, lying through my teeth about their encouragement. I was so stupid. Graduation day arrived on a perfect Saturday morning. I put on my cap and gown, my hands shaking as I adjusted the honor cords around my neck. Summa cum laude. Top of my class. I walked across that stage to receive my diploma, and the first thing I did was scan the audience. My eyes searched desperately for familiar faces. I found none, just strangers clapping politely, probably for their own graduates. The president shook my hand, said something about my outstanding achievement, and I smiled like my heart wasn't cracking open. After the ceremony, I checked my phone. 3 text messages. "Mom, sorry, honey, we got caught up with something." "Dad, your brother needed help, you understand." My sister, "My photo shoot ran late. Congrats, though." I stood there in the parking lot, still wearing my gown, watching families take photos together, and felt more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. The dinner reservation was for 7 o'clock. I arrived at 6:30, hoping maybe they'd surprise me by showing up early. The hostess led me to the table and I arranged the place cards carefully. Mom at the head, Dad next to her, my siblings on the sides, me at the other end. The waitress brought water for everyone, menus, breadsticks. I kept checking my phone, watching the minutes tick by. 7 o'clock came and went. So did 7:15, 7:30. The waitress started hovering, asking if I wanted to order. "Just a few more minutes," I said, my voice small. "They're probably just running late." But I knew, deep down I already knew, they weren't running late. They weren't coming at all. By 8 o'clock, the candles had burned down to nothing. The waitress brought the check for the breadsticks. "Would you like me to box up the food for your family?" she asked gently. That's when I completely broke down. I got home that night and went straight to my journal, the one I'd been keeping since freshman year. I wrote through my tears, my handwriting messy and desperate. They didn't forget, they just didn't care. 4 years of fighting, working, proving myself, and they couldn't even show up for one dinner. But then something shifted inside me. The pain turned into something harder, sharper, determination. I wrote one more line before closing the journal. "One day, they'll wish they hadn't missed tonight." I meant it with every broken piece of my heart. I was done begging for their attention. Done hoping they'd suddenly see my worth. If they couldn't recognize my value, I'd build it so high they'd be forced to notice. I'd make them regret every ignored text, every missed moment, every time they chose someone else over me. This wasn't about revenge. This was about proving to myself that I never needed them in the first place. I moved into a tiny studio apartment with my diploma and $42 in my bank account. For 2 months, I worked 3 part-time jobs just to make rent. Gas station mornings, restaurant afternoons, and overnight data entry. I was exhausted constantly, but I kept thinking about that empty table at Romano's. The humiliation fueled me. During my lunch breaks, I'd work on an idea I'd been developing since junior year. An affordable online tutoring app for underprivileged students. Kids like me who didn't have family support or money for expensive tutors. I'd call it Launchpad. One of my coworkers, Marcus, noticed me constantly sketching wireframes on napkins. "You should pitch that to someone," he said. "Investors love education tech." I laughed. Who'd listen to me? But that night, I started researching startup competitions and grant opportunities. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe this idea could be something real. For 6 months, I sent out emails to investors, accelerators, and anyone who might listen. I got rejected 73 times. I know because I kept count in a spreadsheet. Most didn't even respond. The ones who did were brutal. Not scalable. Oversaturated market. Come back when you have traction. One investor told me I seemed nice but lacked the confidence needed to lead a company. I went home that night and cried for 20 minutes. Then I got back to work. Each rejection taught me something. I refined my pitch, improved my business model, and learned to code basic prototypes through YouTube tutorials. My apartment became a workspace. My dining table was covered in sketches, printouts, and empty coffee cups. I barely slept. I barely ate. But I kept hearing that investor's voice. "You lack confidence." So I decided to build it until nobody could question it again. I was working at the gas station one morning when an older man came in asking about app development. He'd overheard me explaining Launchpad to Marcus. His name was Tom Briggs, a retired software engineer who'd sold his company 10 years ago. He looked at my rough sketches with actual interest. "This is smart," he said. "Really smart. Who's helping you build it?" I admitted nobody. I couldn't afford developers. Tom studied me for a long moment, then pulled out a business card. "I'm bored in retirement. I'll help you code the first version, free." I thought he was joking. But 3 days later, Tom showed up at my apartment with his laptop and said, "Let's build something great." For the next 4 months, Tom mentored me every evening. He taught me to code, to think like an engineer, to build something scalable. He never asked for equity or payment, just said, "Somebody helped me once. I'm passing it forward." We launched Launchpad's beta version in September. I'd poured every free hour into this app, refining features based on feedback from teachers I'd cold emailed. Tom helped me navigate the technical challenges. Marcus spread the word through his teacher friends. The first week, we had 47 users. By month 2, we had 800. Teachers loved it. Students loved it. My parents loved it. We offered free basic tutoring with volunteer tutors and premium features for a small monthly fee that went straight back into paying qualified tutors. The money wasn't much, but it was enough to quit one of my 3 jobs. I started working on Launchpad full-time, sleeping 4 hours a night, surviving on instant ramen and pure determination. Every notification of a new user felt like validation. Every thank you message from a struggling student felt like proof that I was building something that mattered, something my family never saw coming. In November, I got an email that made my hands shake. Launchpad had been nominated for the State Innovation Grant, a competition for local startups making social impact. First prize was $50,000 and a feature segment on the evening news. The ceremony would be held at the convention center and broadcast live. I read the email 3 times, barely believing it. Tom called immediately. "Did you see?" His voice was excited. "Shelly, this is huge. This is your breakthrough." I thought about my graduation dinner, sitting alone at that table, and something clicked. Full circle. If I won, if I got on that news broadcast, my family would finally see what I'd built without them. I didn't call them, didn't send a text. I just started preparing my pitch, imagining their faces when they saw me on television, succeeding beyond anything they thought I was capable of. The week before the ceremony, I was surprisingly calm. I'd spent 2 years proving myself in silence. What was one more week? I practiced my pitch obsessively. Tom helped me refine the presentation. Marcus offered to drive me to the convention center for moral support. But I kept thinking about that dinner, about waiting in my graduation gown while my family chose everything else over me. Part of me wanted to tell them, to invite them to the ceremony, to give them one more chance to show up. But I remembered every ignored text, every dismissive comment, every time they made me feel invisible. They'd had countless chances. They didn't deserve another one, so I stayed quiet. I prepared alone. And I waited for the moment that would change everything, knowing they'd be watching from home, completely unaware that the success story on their television screen was the daughter they'd forgotten. The ceremony was incredible. I pitched Launchpad in front of 5 judges, explaining how we'd helped over 2,000 students in 6 months. I talked about kids from low-income families finally having access to quality tutoring. I shared testimonials from teachers and parents. My voice didn't shake once. When they announced Launchpad as the winner, I walked onto that stage, accepted the $50,000 check, and smiled for the cameras. The news anchor interviewed me afterward. "Tell us about your journey, Shelly. What inspired Launchpad?" I looked directly into the camera and told the truth. I grew up without much support. I funded my own education, graduated at the top of my class, and built this company from nothing because I wanted to help kids who felt invisible like I did. The segment aired that night on the 6 o'clock news. 20 minutes of my face, my story, my success. I didn't watch it live. I was too busy working. But my phone started exploding around 6:15. 47 missed calls, 62 text messages, all from the family group chat I deleted months ago. They'd added me back. "Mom, Shelly, we just saw you on the news. Why didn't you tell us?" "Dad, my daughter, the entrepreneur, so proud." My sister, "OMG, everyone's asking me about you. This is amazing." My brother finally responded to something I'd done. "Yo, that's actually sick. We should celebrate." I stared at my phone, reading message after message of sudden pride and support. They wanted details, photos, interviews about what I was doing. My mom suggested a family dinner to celebrate properly this time. My dad wanted to tell his coworkers. My sister asked if I needed a social media manager. I set my phone down and laughed. Actually, I laughed. After 2 years of silence, one news segment had them flooding my phone like I'd always mattered. I didn't respond. Not that night. Not the next morning. Let them wonder. Let them feel what it's like to be ignored. They showed up at my office unannounced on Thursday morning. All 4 of them smiling like we were the closest family in the world. Mom hugged me tight. Dad shook Tom's hand, introducing himself as the proud father. My sister took selfies in front of our Launchpad banner. My brother asked if we were hearing. I stayed professional, polite, offered them coffee and gave them a tour, but I kept my distance, emotionally speaking. They acted like they'd been supportive all along, asking questions about the business, praising my hard work, telling Tom how they'd always known I was destined for success. Tom looked at me with raised eyebrows. He knew the truth. After they left, he asked quietly, "Where were they before?" I smiled sadly. "Exactly. They'd built nothing with me, supported nothing, showed up for nothing. But now they were acting like proud parents, rewriting history to include themselves in my success story. And I let them believe it for now." 2 weeks later, everything exploded. A national education technology investor reached out after seeing the news segment. They wanted to discuss a partnership deal. We met in their downtown office, and they offered to invest $2 million for 30% equity. My hands shook signing the term sheet. Launchpad was about to scale nationally. The news spread fast. Local reporters wanted follow-up stories. Business journals requested interviews. And my family found out through social media before I could tell them. The group chat came alive again. "Mom, we should host a family dinner to celebrate properly. Our treat this time." Something about those words made my blood freeze. Our treat this time, like they'd treated me to anything before, like they'd shown up to anything that mattered. But I agreed. Same restaurant, Romano's. I even told them I'd handle the reservation. They had no idea what I was planning. I booked the same table at the same time 3 weeks later. But this time I invited reporters, business partners, Tom, Marcus, people who'd actually helped me build Launchpad. I didn't tell my family about the extra guests. When they arrived at Romano's, dressed up and excited, they found me already seated at a table for 20. Investors on my left, journalists on my right, Tom at the head of the table where my mom was supposed to sit. Their faces fell. My mom looked confused. My dad looked uncomfortable. My sister immediately started fixing her makeup, realizing there were cameras. The same waitress from my graduation dinner approached, and I watched recognition flicker across her face. She'd seen me crying here alone 2 years ago. Now she saw me surrounded by people celebrating my actual achievements. I smiled at my family. "Glad you could make it this time." The reporter asked if they could film our dinner for a feature piece. My family couldn't say no, without looking terrible. Halfway through dinner, someone's phone buzzed, then another. Soon everyone at the table was checking notifications. The lead investor smiled at me. "It's official, the acquisition just went through." I blinked. "Acquisition," he showed me his phone. "A major education company bought Launchpad for $12 million. $12 million. The table erupted in congratulations. Tom hugged me. Marcus shouted. The reporters started taking photos, and my family sat frozen, processing what they'd just heard. My mother's fork was suspended midair. My father's face had gone pale. My sister looked like she might faint. The local news interrupted regular programming to announce the acquisition, calling me the small-town success story of the year. My face appeared on the television mounted in the restaurant, the same face that ate breadsticks alone at this table 2 years ago. I raised my glass, making eye contact with each family member. Now this is a dinner I'll never forget. The requests started immediately. Dad wanted to discuss business opportunities. Mom suggested I buy a house where we could all spend holidays together. My sister asked about brand partnerships and if I needed a public face for Launchpad. My brother, who never said a kind word to me, asked if there were positions available in my company. They weren't even subtle about it. Every message was about what I could do for them now. Money, jobs, connections, fame, the things they cared about. I thought about the place cards at my graduation dinner, carefully arranged for people who never came. I thought about every achievement they'd ignored, every time they'd chosen someone else, every moment they'd made me feel worthless. Then I responded to the group chat with 3 sentences. Thank you for your interest. However, I've learned not to rely on family for business. You taught me that. I left the chat again, blocked their numbers, and finally, I felt free. A year later, I gave a keynote speech at the state university graduation. Standing on the same stage where I'd received my diploma, I looked out at hundreds of graduates and their families. I talked about perseverance, about building worth that nobody could ignore, about succeeding despite the people who should have supported you. Near the end, I looked directly into the camera broadcasting the ceremony. Don't wait for validation from people who refuse to see you. Build something so undeniable that their blindness becomes irrelevant. After the speech, I walked off stage to standing applause. Tom was waiting with Marcus and Jenny, my old roommate, my real family, the ones who showed up. I'd heard through mutual friends that my biological family watched the broadcast, that they still talked about me at gatherings, claiming credit for my success. I didn't care anymore. They'd missed every moment that mattered. And I'd learned the most important lesson of all. The best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's building a life so fulfilling that their absence doesn't hurt anymore. I was free, successful, and finally completely at peace.